Welcome to the deep dive. We take stacks of sources, pull out the key insights, and, well, help you get truly informed.
And today, we're getting into a question that sounds simple, but has become incredibly complex.
What really defines woman and man today?
It's definitely a hot topic.
Okay.
I mean, you just have to think back to the 2024 Paris Olympics, right?
Yeah?
The boxers Emaine Keleff and Lin Yue-ting.
Oh, yeah. Gold medals, but huge controversy over their eligibility.
Exactly. It really shone a light on how fraught this whole area is.
And the details there were fascinating. The International Boxing Federation had apparently flagged them before, citing XY chromosomes, typically male. But then the International Olympic Committee stepped in and said, no, they're women according to their passports.
And what's really key there, and maybe gets lost sometimes, is that this wasn't about being transgender.
Right, it was an intersex condition.
Yes. But the whole standoff, biology versus identity, it felt very familiar, didn't it?
It really did. It sets the stage perfectly for what we're diving into.
Our source material today comes from someone who really challenges the common views on both sides of this very polarized debate.
Offering a way to maybe understand the strong feelings involved.
And it's quite a unique perspective. The author is a transsexual individual who's actually faced backlash from both camps.
Which is pretty unusual, so we're aiming to unpack something that might genuinely shift how you think about this.
We tend to assume words like man and woman are just straightforward labels.
Yeah, like we all know what they mean.
But what if how we perceive them, this sort of gut feeling rooted deep in our biology, what if that actually matters more in our day-to-day interactions?
Okay, that's intriguing. This could definitely challenge some assumptions. Let's get into it.
Right. So picture this polarized ring. Our author, they ended up being seen as an outcast by, well, both sides.
It sounds like quite the ordeal. They talk about being called a heretic by what they call team gender identity.
Those activists saying woman and man should just mean your self-declared identity.
And when the author disagreed back in 2017, the pushback was severe. Lost friendships, serious complaints to their work, even the teaching regulation agency.
Accusing them of being a danger to trans kids. I mean, that's incredibly serious.
It really is. But then they also got condemned by the other side, tame biological sex.
The gender-critical folks, yeah. The ones who say woman and man must strictly mean reproductive biology, chromosomes, gonads, genitals, nothing else.
And to that group, our author was also an outcast, accused of, well, some pretty offensive things like parading a sexual fetish.
And saying they were just a man getting excitement from dressing as a woman, even when they were just wearing, normal, comfortable clothes.
Just couldn't catch a break. So from this unique position, being attacked by both sides, what's the author's main point?
Their central argument is that both groups are basically arguing about what the words ought to mean. They're trying to impose a definition.
Instead of looking at what's actually happening.
Exactly. Instead of looking at what actually goes on in our heads when we use these words every single day.
Okay, so if both sides are missing something, what is it?
The author argues it's this pervasive power of perception. Think about it. People have used man and woman successfully for, well, millennia.
Long before we knew about chromosomes, right? That was only, 1905?
Right, or even spermatozoa, 1677. And definitely before gender identity became a term in the 1960s.
So these words, these concepts, they worked long before the science caught up. How?
Well, remember Rishi Sunak's quote, "A man is a man and a woman is a woman." That's just common sense.
Yeah, I remember that causing a stir.
The author takes that idea of common sense, but reframes it. It's not just simple observation, it's more like an evolved instinct.
A gut feeling.
Pretty much. A built-in ability that lets species across the animal kingdom tell sexes apart without needing a biology textbook. It's baked into us.
So our minds instinctively categorize people based on what we see, hear, maybe even smell.
Exactly. Our five senses at close range. Look, sound, smell, feel. Now, obviously, modern communication is different, patchy, secondhand info.
Like online profiles or news reports.
Right. But our brains still seem to crave that binary decision, male or female. It's like a default setting.
The author uses an analogy, right, with the color yellow.
Yes, it's quite effective. Scientifically, yellow light has a specific wavelength, around 580 nanometers.
Okay, physics. Got it.
But look at a yellow image on your phone screen. It's not actually producing that wavelength.
Oh, right. It's red and green lights mixed together.
Precisely. Your screen mixes red and green, but your eyes and brain perceive it unmistakably as yellow. Your cone cells send the same signal as if it were pure yellow light.
So the perception is real, even if the underlying mechanism is different.
That's the key takeaway. Our perception feels like common sense, like seeing yellow. And trying to force definitions based purely on scientific fact often fails because it ignores this shared intuitive perception.
So connecting that back, when people argue only biology matters, they might be missing that often when we just talk, we're using woman and man to refer to this shared perception of sex.
That's the author's contention, yes. We're hardwired to see male or female, like we see yellow. And maybe a lot of the debate stems from confusing the scientific definition with this everyday perceptual use of the words.
And this perceived reality, this gut feeling, that's what fueled the strong reactions to the Olympic boxers.
It seems likely. Campaigners were reacting strongly based on how they perceived those athletes.
But, and this is crucial for sports, the actual divisions aren't based on perception, are they?
No, absolutely not. In sports, it has to be about objective biological advantage. And that primarily comes down to chromosomes, XX versus XY, and the developmental pathways they trigger.
Which explains why intersex conditions need careful assessment in sports.
Exactly. The source points out individuals are assessed based on specific diagnosable differences of sexual development, or DSDs.
Like CAS, complete androgen insensitivity syndrome.
Right. Someone with XY chromosomes, but CAS doesn't respond to testosterone. Their body develops along female lines, so they typically don't have the male-associated performance advantages. They might be eligible for women's sports.
Okay, that makes sense. But then you have other conditions.
Like 5-alpha reductase deficiency, which Castor Semenya is often cited in relation to. These individuals might be assigned female at birth, but their bodies do respond to testosterone during puberty, developing significant male advantages.
So even if someone looks female or was raised female, the underlying biology creates an advantage in sport.
Correct. That potential for male-typical development driven by testosterone is the deciding factor for fairness in competitive sport categories.
So for listeners, the key point for sports is...
It's about fair competition based on biological realities of performance, primarily linked to testosterone exposure during development. Which is why, in the author's view, typical males, including trans women who've gone through male puberty, generally shouldn't compete in women's categories due to that inherent advantage. It's purely about the physical playing field.
Okay. Now, to really grasp the author's perspective, we need to understand their personal reasons for transition. It's not the narrative we often hear.
No, it's quite different. They state it wasn't really about feeling like they had an ethereal gendered soul trapped in the wrong body.
So what was it about then?
More about, well, sexuality, self-image, and fundamentally how they wanted to be perceived by others and by themselves.
And this is where they introduce the concept of autogenophilia, AGP.
Yes, which they acknowledge is controversial and often misunderstood.
Yeah.
But for them, it's key. It describes a heterosexual male pattern of attraction to the idea or image of oneself as female.
That sounds complex.
It is. The author describes feeling their male body was lamentably male and having this powerful urge to align with a mental image of an attractive female form. They even ask, sort of rhetorically, perhaps I had my affair with myself.
Wow, that's incredibly frank. And sharing that kind of honesty, that's where the backlash came in again.
Yes. They describe a frenzied response online, facing cancellation attempts. They note it's a much harder sell than the simpler woman trapped in a man's body narrative.
It's definitely less comfortable, perhaps, for some people to hear.
But it's their explanation. And the core point remains. Transition, for them, didn't change their biological sex, but it profoundly changed how they were perceived.
And that change in perception, that's what made it meaningful, despite the arguments from either extreme side.
Precisely. It validates the idea that perception itself holds significant weight in human experience.
This also leads into the practical issue of, well, spaces, like bathrooms or changing rooms.
Right. The author talks about their own discomfort, post-transition, in both men's and women's communal facilities.
Like both.
Because of those evolved human reactions we talked about earlier. How people instinctively react to perceived body types. They just didn't feel they fit comfortably in either space based on how others, and perhaps they themselves, perceive their body.
That makes sense, following the perception argument. So what's the proposed solution?
The author suggests that maybe the focus should have been on advocating for private third spaces. Optional spaces for anyone, really, who prefers not to share facilities based on sex.
An alternative for those who feel uncomfortable in standard communal setups.
Yeah, they suggest it might have been a perhaps wiser path for trans activists initially.
Okay, this whole debate feels very current. very now. But the author takes it further, right? Into the future.
They do. They argue this whole struggle over man and woman is actually maybe preparing us for an even bigger question. What does it mean to be human?
How so?
Think about advanced AI and robotics. Humanoid robots, androids, gynoids, like C-3PO or the TX from Terminator.
Okay, science fiction becoming reality.
Potentially. And a point is, we will likely perceive these machines as man or woman based on their appearance and voice, even though they have zero biology.
That's a really interesting point. We'd project onto them.
Completely. We might feel an android needs privacy to change its clothes, even though the robot itself couldn't care less. It's our perception dictating the social rules.
We already do that a bit, don't we? Like saying, the woman in my sat-nav, or calling ships she.
Exactly. We assign these gendered terms based on perception, totally separate from biological life.
So the author's hypothesis is how we treat these future robots will be the ultimate test.
Kind of, yeah. A real-world test of whether perception truly dictates how we categorize and interact, forcing us to use pronouns consistently based on how something looks or sounds, regardless of its internal programming or, well, lack of flesh and blood.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up. What's the core takeaway from this deep dive?
The central argument is really that this whole fight over woman and man isn't just about getting the definition right. It's about recognizing two things matter: biological sex and our deeply evolved instinctive perception of sex.
And the author knows this view probably won't satisfy the extremes on either side.
Right. But they argue that's exactly why it's necessary to bridge that gap by acknowledging both realities.
So it implies a kind of double-edged denialism. Extreme trans activists might deny biological science.
And, the author suggests, those who only focus on biology and ignore our evolved psychology, our hardwired perceptions, might be guilty of their own kind of biology denialism, denying how our brains actually work.
It's like our brains evolved for the shortcut, the quick categorization, because, well, it usually works.
Much easier than doing a chromosome test on everyone you meet, right?
Definitely. So the final thought for you listening.
Are we brave enough to step back and consider that our own strongly held views might be incomplete? That the answer might lie in understanding both our physical bodies and our fundamental instincts?
It really makes you think about how much your own perceptions shape everything you see and believe, doesn't it? Not just in this debate, but, well, everywhere. A powerful idea to reflect on.